Valve CEO Gabe Newell recently made waves when, in the Half-Life 25th anniversary documentary, he said, "Late is just for a little while, suck is forever." For evidence of this sentiment, look no further than the controversy surrounding Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, a hastily assembled rush job that ensured the Modern Warfare reboot trilogy ended with a fart. Given that, we can't help but feel justified in maintaining faith in the following titles. Because I'm Si for WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 video games stuck in development hell that we're still looking forward to. Number 10, Perfect Dark. Considering how near perfect the original Perfect Dark was, it's hard not to look forward to the upcoming reboot despite the many factors working against it. Since its reveal at the 2020 Game Awards, the game has reportedly lost half of its development team, which prompted Microsoft to bring in Crystal Dynamics, the maestros behind the crushingly underrated Soul Reaver series, to help finish development. Unfortunately, Crystal Dynamics' association with the dysfunctional Embracer Group has seen the studio lose a number of key personnel, which has likely affected the Perfect Dark reboot development cycle. And of course, there's the small matter that Perfect Dark Zero, the Xbox 360-based prequel, was absolutely abysmal. Caught chasing market trends at the time, Zero's cover-based shooting and methodical, also known as clunky and slow-paced combat, was a disastrous downgrade from the original. Yet hope still persists. Sea of Thieves has shown that Rare can summon some magic akin to the old that made them the industry powerhouse in the N64 days, and hopefully anyone that was around for the days of Perfect Dark Zero has learned from those mistakes. Rare work best when going their own way as opposed to following the market leader, and hopefully the Perfect Dark reboot will see them back at their idiosyncratic best. Number 9, Playdead's next game. Playdead aren't exactly known for their prolific release schedule, what with the 6-year gap between Limbo and Inside, but even by their standards, their upcoming third game is taking a staggeringly long time to finish. Despite having first announced the game's existence back in 2018, Playdead's latest still doesn't have a title or much information beyond a handful of screenshots and a job listing for a third-person sci-fi adventure. One person who saw this coming was Playdead co-founder Dino Patti, who specifically cited this game as his reason for leaving the company. Patti stated in an interview with Edge magazine that he left the studio because what they're attempting will take 8 to 12 years to create. Far too long in his mind to spend on a single video game. Yet while Patti's argument is perfectly understandable, Playdead's ludicrous ambition makes it hard not to get excited over what they're preparing to unleash on the gaming public. Limbo and Inside are both critical darlings, and it's impossible not to be intrigued over the result of their creators spending a decade to perfect their next masterpiece. Number 8, Hollow Knight Silksong. A perennial entrant in WhatCulture's most anticipated games list for several years now, Silksong has taken far longer to gestate than most expected. Ever since the sequel to Hollow Knight was announced, anticipation has been running high. Team Cherry's magnum opus was wildly hailed as one of the greatest entries in the Metroidvania pantheon upon its 2017 release, and in the 6 years since, only Metroid Dread has come close to matching it. Hollow Knight's intricate world building, razor-sharp level design, and blood-pumping boss battles were a staggering achievement from an unknown independent studio, and Team Cherry have taken their time to craft a sequel worthy of its legacy. It's been far too much radio silence for far too much time. However, Team Cherry have earned lots of trust with Hollow Knight, and no matter how long it takes, legions of fans will be there on launch day to enjoy the latest entry in the saga of gaming's most melancholy insects. Number 7, Judas. With all the big video game anniversaries that occurred in 2023, such as Doom's 30th, Metal Gear Solid's 25th, and Call of Duty's 20th, you'd be forgiven for not realising that this year also saw the 10th anniversary of the divisive BioShock Infinite. Infinite unfortunately ended the BioShock trilogy on a sour note, as the game's entertaining combat was overshadowed by its boneheaded storytelling. The central conflict of the game, of oppressed minorities rising up against their persecutors, resulted in a horrendously ill-judged conclusion that essentially said, well, they're all as bad as each other. BioShock creator Ken Levine hastily retconned this unwelcome development in the game's DLC, but by then the damage had been done. Hopefully he's learned his lesson, as his upcoming game looks like it contains all the best bits of BioShock that people actually liked. The trailer that dropped in last year's Game Awards show revealed that Judas is embracing BioShock's sci-fi steampunk aesthetic and superpower-fueled combat, and if the story is more in line with the first 2 BioShock games, then it will be a rollicking good time when it eventually does show up. It may have been trapped in development hell for 7 years, as Take-Two Interactive actually trademarked the name Judas back in 2016, but here's hoping Ken Levine's latest work acts as a redemption for his last foray into gaming. Number 6, Metroid Prime 4. I mean, it's Metroid Prime, need we say any more? For the few in the audience who don't know, hi mum! The Metroid Prime trilogy cemented Retro Game Studios as one of the finest developers on the planet at the time. The first entry is routinely hailed as one of the greatest games ever made, and its sequels are damn fine in their own right too. As such, expectations are high for the long-awaited 4th entry in the series despite the near-total lack of information on it. The one and only trailer for Metroid Prime 4 did little more than reveal the logo. Since then, Retro Studios have maintained a vow of silence over the project, causing concern over the state of the game's development. This is nothing new for Metroid fans. The Metroid Prime series has a history with tortuous development cycles, and Prime 4 was restarted after a year and a half of development. This actually mirrors the first entry after the legendary Shigeru Miyamoto slammed it in a meeting with Retro Studios and sent them back to the drawing board, which, given how Metroid Prime turned out, is likely no bad thing. Number 5, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Few games on this list have had as much of their dirty laundry aired as Bloodlines 2. The sequel to the near universally adored 2004 cult classic, Bloodlines 2's development has been chaotic to say the least. Originally meant to release in 2019, Bloodlines 2 suffered delay after delay until original developers Hardsuit Labs were removed from the project in 2021. After 2 years of radio silence, publishers Paradox Interactive finally shared some good news for those who had been keeping the faith. A fresh batch of screenshots was released this July, and new developers The Chinese Studio got into the Halloween spirit by releasing information about the game's main character on All Hallows Eve. It's been a long journey for Bloodlines hardened fans, but the sequel looks set to deliver on the 20-year wait. The new developers excel at narrative-focused games, and given that Bloodlines is fondly remembered for its stellar writing rather than its perfunctory combat, the Chinese studio should be excellent stewards to carry on the best aspects of the original game. Number 4, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic's remake. The Force does not look strong with this one. The KOTOR remake, much like Bloodlines 2, has suffered a large amount of negative press over its protracted development cycle. Hell, the CEO of the developer's parent company recently refused to discuss it during an investors meeting because he didn't want to see any more headlines about the game. Given that recent headlines have hardly painted the most positive picture of the game's development, is it cancelled, is it not, you can see why he's begun dreading seeing his game in the news. Yet, like Luke Skywalker's adamant belief that there was still good in Darth Vader, hope for this troubled remake remains strong. Despite all the setbacks, like the game's official trailer being pulled from YouTube, or the game switching development teams, or yes, in fact, the many rumours that the remake is deader than Alderaan, there is still belief that something great can come of the project. The original Knights of the Old Republic is a landmark release in video game history, and it's hard to believe any studio would simply give up on the chance to update it for a new generation. Even if the developers have to rein in their ambitions to the extent the finished product resembles a remaster more than a remake, KOTOR's foundations are so strong that it would still be one of the best games of whatever year it's released. Hopefully one day we can say, somehow KOTOR returned. Number 3, the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. Whilst far from being the first game, Prince of Persia The Sands of Time is the entry that brought the series to new heights. However, after the franchise had been dormant for years, Ubisoft announced a remake of the classic in 2020. Whilst you could say it's cheap and a nostalgia grab, it also sort of makes sense from a business standpoint. Unfortunately, nothing since then has made really any sense at all. First of all, the reveal trailer came under heavy criticism for having some really janky animations and a unanimously detested art style. Ubisoft defended their choices at first, but the January date slipped to March and then vanished completely. The company went so far as to cancel existing pre-orders for the game. Ubisoft said in May of 2023 that the game had changed teams and was still in early stages of development, even going so far as to call it the concept phase, after 2 years. Look, there's absolutely going to be plenty of pre-production for this thing, making sure to handle it with care, but the game you're adapting from already exists. It's a remake, it's not like you're crafting a brand new IP. With Ubisoft releasing a different Prince of Persia game entirely in 2024, it's made many people wonder if Sands of Time has been lost to the sands of time. Number 2, Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Development hell, thy name is Dreadwolf. The sequel to Dragon Age Inquisition has experienced an infamously tortured production cycle, and there still isn't an end in sight. Next year will mark 10 years since the release of the last Dragon Age game, and series creators BioWare have undergone huge changes since then. Dreadwolf has seen the loss of creative directors, executive producers, and as of this August, 50 developers. Given that, and the fact that BioWare's recent output hasn't exactly set the world on fire, it's easy to be cynical about Dreadwolf's prospects. Yet such is the strength of BioWare's golden age, gamers still hold fast to the hope that the studio can rekindle the embers of its flickering glory. BioWare have been responsible for some of the greatest RPGs ever made, and we maintain the belief that the new guard must have learned at least some lessons from the studio's now departed alumni. No one is expecting Dreadwolf to rival Baldur's Gate 3 for quality or ambition, but at the very least it should be another absorbing adventure in the Dragon Age saga. And number 1, Star Citizen Squadron 42. Years from now, books will be written about how Star Citizen creator Chris Roberts convinced gamers to continue throwing hundreds of millions millions of dollars at a game that is now 9 years past its original due date. But we're not just waiting for Star Citizen, we're also waiting for a spin-off. Yes, a game that's not released already has a spin-off. Squadron 42 will be a single-player offshoot for Star Citizen. For gamers of a certain age, it promises to be a massively nostalgic romp through space. Chris Roberts made his name on the Wing Commander series, which married space combat with endearingly camp full-motion video, featuring celebrities of varying fame, from Mark Hamill to Biff from Back to the Future. Squadron 42 sees Roberts return to these roots, allowing the player to take part in dogfights alongside famous faces such as Gary Oldman, Mark Strong, Gillian Anderson, and yes, Mark Hamill again. It's definitely the nostalgia talking, but it's hard not to be enamoured with the prospect of sitting in front of a monitor, joystick in hand, blasting through space with a cast of A to C list celebrities. Give me a carton of Ribena and it'll be like the 90s never ended. Let's all join hands and hope that these video games all come out, and in fact are all great, because too many projects get cancelled. In fact, here's a video on screen now that you can watch for 10 cancelled video games that would have been Game of the Year. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment down below about which of these games you're most excited for. Head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Si for WhatCulture, and have a good week.